Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our next episode of the ERP Circle of Excellence. This joint project includes Dynamics Community, Summit North America, Acceleration Economy, and HandsFree ERP. This is where we actually are breaking down each one of the different steps that go along with really trying to create a modern approach to your ERP strategy and implementation. I am joined in typical fashion by CIO of PriceSmart, Wayne Sadin, CIO of Paragon Films, Kenny Mulligan, and the founder and the big head honcho over at HandsFree ERP, Peter Jekyll. Gang, as we've been going through this process, we've talked about everything from setting and maintaining budgets. We've talked about the difference between on-premise and cloud ERP and things to think about there and the like. In multiple sessions that we've held, we've talked about this issue of data. We've talked about this issue of data integration and more. Today, we're going to unpack this in a little bit more detail. In fact, what I've asked this great list of panelists to think through is kind of a checklist approach to what those data elements are that need to be considered while you're starting your ERP project. And then as you're going through that ERP project, try to avoid some of those creep issues and those sorts of things that take place. Wayne, I want to kick things off with you this week, if I can. You know, we've got this sort of evolving world of unstructured content and structured data coming together through things like data lakes and the like, and the rapid pace of innovation we're seeing from organizations like Microsoft with Fabric and others out there. What do you think the key checklist items are that organizations need to consider when they are moving to a new ERP system?
Well, I'm assuming you're moving to a modern cloud ERP system, or what the heck are you doing?
Yes,
That's the first thing. And so recognize that we're moving from systems of record, that is keeping score looking backward, to systems of engagement, which is how we deal with our processes and our customers and our employees, to systems of insight, which is how we turn that data into information used to drive decisions. So when you're making your ERP decision, don't think about systems of record. Think about how you're going to get insight out of it to drive better decisions, whether it's planning, execution, pricing, customer service, whatever. That's first. Second of all, recognize that the modern data model is a data lakehouse. It is not a data lake with a data warehouse. It is not files over here that you move over there. The way to get the value out of this is to put in the right infrastructure. And so just a simple thing, we used to call it ETL, extract, transform, and load. In a modern data lakehouse, it's ELT. That sounds trivial. I just switched two letters. That says I pull it out, I put everything in the lakehouse, load, and then I transform it using a powerful modern tool because it's there when I need it. And so I think those are the keys, is recognize that you are not doing just general ledger type data. You're doing all the data used to drive really great decisions in a really compressed time frame. And so focus on how you're going to drive the future decisions and not just how you're going to add up the data.
So I love the point and that modern aspect. Wayne, you've spent so much time analyzing this, right? But the beauty of this kind of modern environment is that you can have the unstructured content and the structured data living in one spot, right? And then the proper extraction tools, right? The tools to pull all this information out, BI tools, those sorts of things that can then actually enable, and I don't want to call it real time because that could be a little too ambitious a statement, but very close to real time intelligence that then you can use to make, what could be vital business decisions for the organization. So much of that coming from this move from systems of record, right? And that sort of thing. I love those points. Peter, well, actually, Peter, before I go to you, Wayne, I want to ask you one follow-up if I can. That's a lot of stuff that you just talked through. How do you prioritize this stuff, right? How do you actually prioritize this for yourself, but then also for your IT teams, your finance teams, and others?
Well, I think the simple way to do it is don't ask about the business you're in today. Ask your senior team, what is the problem you see in 3 years or 5 years? What question do you need to answer in the future? Not what data do you want to collect, because that's how you did it before, but where are you going with this? And so the prioritization should fall out of the questions that you want to answer and in your old methodology cannot answer. And that's how I start the survey of tell me your pain points today. That's easy. Now tell me your vision and how this system and process transformation is not a software project. It's a process transformation. How do you collect the right data to make the decisions? And I wouldn't say real time. I agree with you, John. Let me say the decisions need to be in time
Yeah.
rather than real time. Maybe you have a day to make a decision. Maybe you have a microsecond, but match the decision to the time frame that keeps you one step ahead of your competitor.
I love that. Not real time, but in time, right? It's such a great way to think about it. Peter, I want to, go over to you here for a second because, based on some of the context and perspective that, Wayne just offered around data readiness and such, what sort of frameworks do you suggest organizations leverage so that they can, make sure they get it as close to right as they possibly can?
Yeah. So I spoke about this yesterday to a group of folks contemplating an implementation. And here's what I talked about to them. The fact that data conversion seems to the average person seems like this. Oh yeah, the data comes out of here and it's over there. That's it. And the thing I sat down and explained to them is that here's what happens is, first of all, you have three types of data that you're pulling out of your existing system. You have master data, which is your customers, your vendors, your items, things of that nature. You have transactional data. That's how much money do people owe us, right? And those transactions change all the time. And then you have historical data. Do we need 1 year? Do we need 30 years? What do we need? You have different types of data. And now think about this for a moment about how these traditional data conversions happen, because this is where you want to switch from what I'm about to tell you to what Wayne is talking about with the new tools. You extract the data into an Excel spreadsheet. Everybody does this because the vendors provide Excel spreadsheets that you can populate as if this is some magic transitional tool.
Now,
And
Peter,
then,
I need to interrupt you for 1 second because
yeah.
I think, Wayne, we're going to have to point Peter to your minute that you created, right? Your short video on why it's time to kill Excel, right? Sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we got a good one for you on that.
So picture this process I'm about to describe happening perhaps 20, 30, 40 different times. Somebody pulls out some data, let's say it's the customers. And now somebody that's an expert on the customers is given that data and said, okay, now let's clean it up. Let's take out all the people that we don't want to deal with anymore. And all the places where it's capitals and it shouldn't be capitals, and some people entered it wrongly. Let's clean it up from a look and feel standpoint. So when we send out letters and things like that in the future, they look nice. And oh, by the way, the new system needs all these fields that you don't have. Let's figure out how to get them in there. And oh, look at this. Here are 5 critical fields that you guys use that there's really no good place in the new system to put. Let's try to figure out how to get that in the new system. And everybody's head explodes and they figure, okay, we got it. Oh, you forgot something. While you were doing this, more of this stuff was happening in the old system. And now you got to bring it out and you got to add it to that spreadsheet. And now somebody's sitting in there going, what did I do? Did I bring it right? Imagine doing that 20, 30, 40 times with spreadsheets, different developers, different people, and then pray that the data is correct when you bring it in when it's live. There's 2 things that I would say to people. Number 1, somebody has to own each major piece of data. And that means they sign off in blood that the data is correct, because when we turn the system on and pricing goes out wrong, somebody's got to be responsible. The other thing is there are great tools available today that manage these processes, both with cleaning the data, with managing how it's been exported and imported and how many times. Take advantage of those, because the old Excel 30, 40, 40 different people doing this is madness.
So, Wayne, the good part is we find out through all of it, Peter agrees, right? Peter agrees with it. It's exactly right. And there is a there's 2 things, and then Kenny, I want to get some of your feedback here, please. But there's 2 things across those 2, right? First one is, don't try to, the words lift and shift. People use these terms all the time, like, hey, you can just take it from here and put it over here and it's going to be the same thing. That's not a modernization project, which is what Wayne was talking through. because if it was just a lift and shift, it would be okay to just keep doing the Excel stuff and the this stuff and the that stuff, right? If you're modernizing your business, you can't, because you've got to frame it for the future of your business, not what got you where you are today. So I love the peanut butter and jelly sandwich of the two things that you folks just talked about. Kenny, you have, as we've talked about, just gone through big migration to the cloud with D365 finance and supply chain. What did your data, sort of checklist look like, right? So kind of frame to some of these things that we're talking about here. And now having gone through it, what would you have done maybe a little differently as some ideas for folks?
Yeah, so to start with, one of the things I want to point out, and it may not be obvious if you haven't been through an ERP re-implementation or switch, and that is that your ERP system is not just one little application that you can do a little bit at a time. At least for us in a manufacturing company, this runs the entire organization, everything from sales to warehousing to manufacturing to shipping to invoicing to accounting. It's all there. It is impossible to partially switch to where you're still using the old ERP for some things and the new ERP for other things and do it just a little bit at a time. You can't just iterate. So you have to think about some point in time where all the data that you need to run your business every single day, boom, it's all there and ready to go right now. Now, think about this too. On day one, everybody has all these things that they do as part of their daily activity. And part of that includes running reports or getting the data that they need to do their job. Well, you can't necessarily just say, don't worry about what you used to do. We're going to completely invent a whole new process for everything. This is a whole organization that hopefully is already running pretty well. And so for the most part, what you want to do is say, well, how do I get the report that I was getting before? Okay, some of those reports are going to include year-over-year data or data that goes back the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And what may not be completely obvious is it is almost impossible to bring historical transactions into a new system. You can bring your master data, you can bring your open transactions, your open accounts, payables, some of those kind of things, and get a snapshot in time. But what you're not going to have is every sales order from the past and every shipment from the past and every inventory transaction from the past. And so all those reports that need to have, well, I need to see last month and then the month before, you're either going to be using two completely different systems, or you got to come up with some way to merge all this data from an old system and a new system into one big system. And maybe that's in a data lake or a lake house, but getting all of the information from the old system into that lake house and the new system into the lake house, that's the part that you want to already have in mind that you're going to have to do before you even start the project. Because if you wait too long to think about data migration, to think about how you're going to get at the data, how you're going to do reporting in BI until you're just about done with the project, and then you say, okay, great, we've just got a few months to get all of this stuff done, you're putting an enormous amount of pressure, and the company's saying, now, we're not going to give you much leeway past the day one launch to get all of those other things in place. You may get a little bit of grace there, but it's not going to go on, 6 months or a year where people don't have their reports. So, I know that's a lot, but that's what I can most bring away from my most recent experiences. Don't underestimate that part of it, because it'll really bite you.
Would that be your number one tip, Kenny? Just don't underestimate it, right? Make sure that you're going at it, or would you have another kind of primary tip for somebody?
No, I think that's the best one there, is just to fully look through, like what Wayne said, what is your end game? What are you trying to get to? But then also don't discount that you're going to need to have what you already had. How are you going to put all that together? And whether that's your implementation partner or somebody else that helps you with that, have a plan before you even get started and throughout the project. Keep going back to that and paying attention, because it's as crucial or more crucial than how you configure your screens and how you set up your processes.
Great stuff, Kenny. Peter, number one tip from you for everybody from a data readiness perspective.
I'm going to go with something that we talked about on the last episode, is data conversion often gets buried in the proposal process because it's expensive and time consuming. And it's one of those easy things that somebody can kind of bury and then it pops up mid-project, and you're shocked at all the time, effort, and expense that's related to it. Don't overlook it.
Great one. Wayne, over to you for your final point.
So both of these guys talked about data and how ugly it is. I'm going to make it worse. When you're converting historical data, don't forget that over the last 8 years, you've upgraded the old system 14 times. And so your data formats have changed 14 times. So your data conversion program that worked for last quarter and the quarter before that didn't work for the year before that, and didn't work for the year before that. That's another one. And by the way, you had a different system the year before that. So all of this mapping these guys are talking about, you get to do multiple times. And the further back you go in time, you go, I can't even read this magnetic tape because we threw the tape drives away 6 years ago. So when your accounting people, your auditors say, I need 20 years of data, tell them no. Just tell them no. And then send them the bill for each time they want to go back a generation, and recognize this is uglier than even these guys who made it ugly are telling you.
Boy, Wayne, that's such a good point. All of these have been fantastic points, fellas, but that one of how many iterations there's been of the existing systems that you have, and how many times that data has shifted in format and function and approach and how it's being stored, all that kind of stuff. Huge point that oftentimes is just not something you're thinking about while you're going through this process, because you're trying to modernize all of these things, right? You're not thinking about that regression analysis, if you will, against how many iterations there's been. It's a great point. Gang, thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully you got some good ideas and good tips here from this program. As I think everybody knows, we are going to be, this crew is going to be at Summit North America in our ERP Circle of Excellence Lounge as well, where we're going to be there to just shoot the breeze with you. If you heard some things here in any of these episodes that are helpful, that you'd like to go a little deeper on, that kind of stuff, we ain't there to sell you nothing, right? We are just there to have conversations with you, help you through some of the big stuff that you're dealing with, as we do as a community at Community Summit North America. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Wayne, Kenny, and Peter, thanks for the great ideas.